So we're going to make some mallet injury splints. And the first one is a splint that I like to make so that the patient can go in the shower, into a swimming pool or a hot tub, and not have to worry about getting straps wet. She's got a pretty tiny little finger, so it's gonna be a little, kind of make it a little bit smaller for you. The pattern sort of looks like this. Then I'm going to punch 2 holes into the splint material, leaving enough surface on the edges to support the middle phalanx and the distal phalanx. They may be too close together. Yeah, it's pretty close together. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, while that one's heating, I'm going to make the other splint design that I like to use. Actually, this is, I don't want to use that material. It feels like it's 3/32, and I want a 16th inch material here. Should be ready now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push her finger down through the first hole, up through the second hole. They were pretty close together. They should be a little further apart than that. Oh, the material's stuck together. Let's try that again. If a patient does have fingernail polish, which I don't think you do you? No. It can stick. So we're going down through the first hole, up through the second hole. Then we're going to make sure that we're in the middle of the middle phalanx down here, the middle of the distal phalanx. And then these edges on the side are going to come up and wrap over the dorsal aspect of the DIP joint. And that's going to support the DIP joint in slight hyperextension. And on the volar surface, we are far enough away from the PIP joint so that joint is going to be able to flex all the way down, and this is going to hold the distal phalanx in slight hyperextension. So that can just be easily slipped on and off the finger. Now, I often will use the heat gun right here on this edge briefly, just really quick, to seal that down so that it makes a nice permanent bond. But that's the one-piece mallet. The next one, I think I'm going to have somebody with a little bit bigger finger. Can you come and sit in, Karen? Do you need to take rings off? I think it's easier to see. No, it doesn't matter. We'll do it on your index finger. So with this one, we're going to just run a dorsal piece from the PIP joint to the tip of the finger. And as this is hardening, I'm holding the distal phalanx in slight hyperextension. So they say you don't want so much that the skin blanches, but enough so that those tendon ends can reapproximate. And then once that hardens, you take a second piece of thermoplastic and run it underneath the distal phalanx and secure it to the dorsal piece. Again, I might use my heat gun to heat that and seal it permanently. And then I'm going to need a strap on the proximal end of the splint to hold it to the finger. Now, I do not have finger strapping material with me, but I definitely recommend the thinner, narrower finger Velcro for securing that proximal strap. But right now I'm going to just use what I have here. So I'm going to cut it a little bit narrower. And you want to make sure that this strap does not interfere with PIP joint flexion. So you may want to cut it up a little bit so the PIP joint can bend. Okay? So again, this strap is a little bit thicker than I would like it to be. So now we're going to try to make that modification that will hold the PIP joint in flexion, because it's now recommended that we hold the PIP joint at 30 degrees of flexion for the first 3 weeks. And so what I want is thermoplastic volarly push the finger through, and then the top of the thermoplastic is going to hold the finger in flexion. So I basically want to put a hole right around the level of your PIP joint line. And then this doesn't need to be as long as I made it. So I'm going to cut this off. So it's almost like a square with a hole in the middle. Okay. So I am going to remove this until I get that piece in place. So I would, if it was a patient, I might do something to keep that DIP joint extended. And I'm just making it out of a different color so you can see it better. But you could use the same thermoplastic material that we used. And I'm actually going to cut this hole. I punched it with a hole punch, but I actually wanted a little bit bigger. So I'm just using the scissors to trim that hole a little larger. So now I am going to place this on the finger. So they push the finger through. This part is going to be volar. And this part is going to hold the finger in 30 degrees of flexion. So what I need to do is put that little splint back on and strap it in and hold her PIP joint in 30 degrees of flexion, so that this is resting on the top of the splint that I previously made. And it's a little high up on the side, so I'm going to trim that back and strap the dorsal piece, and then this will just limit her from extending beyond 30 degrees, but the advantage is that it allows for full flexion, which we still want to do. So I think that's better than completely immobilizing the PIP joint. So then we're going to take this off. I'm going to remove this. Trim it. Trim the dorsal piece as well. Okay, so then I would put my Velcro on there. And again, I would use the finger Velcro here. So I just basically put a Velcro all the way around the back there. This piece will work for now. So I'm going to put this on. Oops. Push the finger through. This goes on here. Okay, so that stays there. And then this one goes there. So that's holding the DIP and hyperextension. It's allowing extension to a limited range, so that's going to prevent hyperextension deformity, and it's allowing for flexion. Okay, at 3 weeks, when you no longer need to include the PIP joint, of course, this comes off, and this goes back on for the remainder of the immobilization period, which is another 3 to 5 weeks. Okay.